Hello there, you're watching RT International, broadcasting to you live from Moscow. I'm Nikki Erin. Thank you for joining us this hour. We begin this hour with Paris, where labour reform protesters have clashed with riot police, with officers unleashing tear gas on the activists. Let's find out some more details about the situation in Paris at the moment from local journalist Dimitri Petrunin. He's there and he now joins us on the phone. Dimitri, thank you for joining us. What's currently happening where you are now?
Well, right now the demonstration is slowly dying down. However, the key elements that took part in the clashes, they're still here, and you still have a sense of tension hanging in the air.
I see. Now, you said that people, it looks like they're leaving from where the protests were earlier. What kind of numbers did we see today? Of course, back in March, when at the peak of these protests, we saw hundreds of thousands, and that went down to around 35,000 at the beginning of July. So what kind of figures were we seeing today?
I cannot say for sure, but at least several tens of thousands. No. Personally, I would say no less than 30. I have no official figures yet, but my estimate would be around 30,000.
Just around 5 p.m. local time there in France now. How long have the protests been continuing? What time did they start, and what was the peak?
They started around 2 o'clock at Place.Les, just 2 kilometers from where I am right now at the République. And clashes began maybe 40 minutes afterwards as the march approached their final destination.
I see. And around the peak time, I saw some images of people starting fires, burning effigies. I saw a man with blood on his face. What kind of scenes were you seeing around that time?
The same things. It started out as a small scuffle in the middle of the protest, which quite quickly escalated. Riot police started firing tear gas. It then subsided, but then since then we've had at least maybe 10 clashes between riot police and protesters.
It seems that things escalated very quickly, and even though people are leaving now, there is an incentive for these protests to continue. What do you know about that?
Well, according to union leaders, today was supposed to be the final protest, after which they would take their fight to the French courts. However, the people I've spoken to today show no intention of stopping going to the streets, stopping protesting.
I see. And these
so it's a fairly contradictory feeling here in Paris.
I see. The demonstrations were not just planned for the capital, of course. They're also planned across the country, including in Lyon and Marseille. What was the turnout like there?
I do not have figures from Lyon or Marseille. I know for a fact that the Paris one is the biggest one right now. I've spoken to people here who are in touch with protesters in Lyon. However, once again, I have no specific numbers just yet.
OK, this labour reform has already been approved by Parliament. These people know this. Are they hoping that these continued protests will help overturn the law, or are they just using it as a way to show their anger and frustration?
I think there is a part of the protesters who truly do hope that if they continue going to the streets, expressing themselves, eventually the law will be repealed. However, the majority here seem to just want to express how dissatisfied they are with the reform.
This labour reform really is going to affect the younger generation, those looking for jobs and starting new jobs, and how they're treated in their current workplaces. Has the turnout today been a large majority of younger people?
I would say while there is definitely a majority of younger people here, I would not say it's an incredible majority. However, absolutely that the clashes, the people who are taking part in the clashes are, of course, of the younger generation.
We've seen a mixture of different people, you know, ages, and a lot of people also wearing face masks. So these are the people who you think are more likely to engage in the clashes with riot police. For instance, do you think they're there wearing the masks, intending to start a violent demonstration?
I think it is quite possible. I personally have seen hundreds of people who have come with balaclavas, with goggles, as though they were prepared to face tear gas. And this was before the actual clashes took place.
I'm just looking at some of the images from Paris right now, as we can see the riot police in their full gear with shields as well. It's quite an intimidating presence, really, isn't it? What about the people who aren't involved in these protests? I'm thinking of families, people with young children. Are they just staying indoors? Are they being warned by the local authorities to stay away from certain areas?
I think so. Originally, when I first arrived to Place de Bastille, when the protests began, I saw families, I saw a few small children, but as the march commenced, there were fewer and fewer, little kids, fathers and mothers. So I think most of them are staying away from the center of Paris today.
And of course, with them, a lot of workers from the airports taking part in the strike and also coming out to protest. What's the situation's been like at those airports and those airlines that have been affected? Has it been chaos? Because some media are reporting that there's been quite minimal, the effect.
Well, from what I know, the air traffic disruption is minimal, but nevertheless, it is taking place, affecting numerous English airlines, especially English airlines. So you have EasyJet, British Airways, I know, have to cancel some flights. But it is nowhere near as bad as it was during the summer months.
Okay, Dimitri, thank you so much for bringing us up to speed on what the situation is like there in the capital right now. Local journalist Dimitri Petrunin, thanks again. Well, protesters have also taken to the streets in other cities across France, as I just said. These are pictures from Nantes, where police used water cannon to disperse demonstrators. Several thousand people took to the streets there. Opponents of the new law see it as skewed in favour of employers, while the government says it will boost jobs. Okay, we can now go over to our guest, political analyst Pierre Schweitzer. Mr. Schweitzer, thank you so much for joining us on the programme. It's a pleasure. Now, union leaders have vowed to fight on. What can actually be done at this point to reverse this law?
Nothing. Essentially, it's probably more symbolic than anything else. The unions just wanted to show that despite the summer holidays that brutally put an end to the protest, and despite the fact that the bill was passed, that they haven't lost the game, But in fact, I think they did, and that's just my opinion, but I think it's pretty much objective.
The anger amongst protesters for President Hollande is really palpable in these demonstrations. According to recent polls, 4 out of 5 French people are opposed to the French president standing for a second term. How much is this due to these labour laws?
I would say probably not much due to these labor laws. He probably lost his own electors with these labor laws. The people from the left were expecting a left-wing government to be more social, to be probably less free market orientated. But it's probably not the main reason why Hollande is very unpopular. We have so many other issues in France, and the labor laws, they're not really much in the news. To be honest, I read and watch the news every day, and they didn't even talk about these protests today in France, in French media. So it's not much really, and it's really the very core of the protesters probably the more radical, the most violent protesters who still want to light the fire back, you know.
Well, it looks like we've seen another surge of anger in France today with these latest clashes. But generally, the protest movement is not nearly as strong now as it was back in the spring, earlier this year, when we saw these massive rallies. Do you think it will just gradually die out?
It will die out on this subject, at least, because the bill was passed. But it may, you know, it may transform and turn gradually into some other form of anger on another issue, another subject, maybe something concerning other social laws, something, you know, an idea coming out in the presidential election debate. So it could be anything else, really, but concerning these specific laws, I'm pretty sure it will die out, and it's already died out, actually.
Okay, Mr. Schweitzer, thank you so much for your insight on this topic. Political analyst Pierre Schweitzer, thanks again.
Thank you.